I thought the world had ended until I realized it was just the beginning of my story. My name is Arthur, I'm 25 years old, and today I can say with a tranquility that once seemed impossible that I'm at peace with my choices. But it wasn't always this way. A few years ago, I lived in a constant state of confusion, caught between what I wanted and what was expected of me. I was in my 6th year of engineering, trying to convince myself every day that this path made sense. I woke up early, studied late, tried to be the exemplary student, the dedicated son, the promising young man everyone proudly pointed out at family gatherings. But deep down, none of it fulfilled me. With each semester, the feeling of living a borrowed life grew. The pressure was suffocating, and the fear of disappointing my parents kept me going in circles, feigning enthusiasm where there was only exhaustion. I wasn't living, I just functioned on autopilot, like a robot trying to fit into a mold that tightened me every day. I clearly remember the mornings when my alarm clock would go off and my first thought was to escape. The crowded bus, the incessant noise of the city, the accumulated fatigue that made me feel 50 years old. I observed the people around me and wondered if they also felt trapped or if the problem was just me. My colleagues seemed motivated, talking about projects, internships, career plans, and inside I felt only a growing emptiness. It was as if my life were being written by other hands. At night when I got home, I pretended to be fine. I smiled at dinner, answered questions with a "everything's great," while the weight of the lie crushed me. My parents, proud of their engineer son, had no idea that that title was costing me sleepless nights and silent crises in the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and saw someone who was falling apart, but I didn't know how to stop without looking like a failure. The final straw came on a Thursday afternoon during a project presentation. It was one of those days when the air feels heavy from the start. I barely slept, and nervousness was eating away at me. When it was my turn to present, my mind simply blanked. Words wouldn't come out, my hands trembled, and cold sweat ran down my forehead. I tried to appear calm, but I felt panic taking over, as if my body was screaming to get out of there. I finished the presentation anyway and ran to the bathroom. I locked the door and broke down. I cried for long minutes, not from shame, but from exhaustion. It was as if all the effort to keep up appearances had taken its toll on me all at once. In that bathroom, I understood what I no longer wanted: to live pretending to be someone I wasn't. It was a painful moment, but also the first glimpse of freedom I'd had in a long time. In the following days, the thought of dropping out of school began to occupy my mind like a persistent voice, impossible to silence. At the same time, fear paralyzed me. How could I tell my parents that I wanted to give up on their dream? I knew it wouldn't be an easy conversation. I spent entire nights rehearsing what to say, imagining reactions, trying to convince myself it was just a phase. But the discomfort didn't go away. On the contrary, it grew. Until one day, unable to bear it any longer, I sat down in front of them and spoke. "I'm dropping out of school." The words came out firmly, but my hands trembled. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother cried. My father just got up and left the room. In that moment, I felt the weight of all the expectations crashing down on me. But behind the guilt was a new feeling, a strange, almost liberating lightness. For the first time, I had chosen for myself. The weeks that followed were the quietest of my life. My father barely spoke to me. My mother tried to mask her sadness with forced pleasantries. The house felt cold, as if the air were thick with unspoken words. I spent my days locked in my room, unsure of what to do. Part of me regretted it. Another part insisted it was the right thing to do. Social media was a cruel reminder of what I'd left behind. Classmates posting photos of labs, achievements, graduations. I felt behind, lost, aimless. But amidst this internal chaos, something began to shift. Little by little, I began reconnecting with the things that truly brought me pleasure, taking apart devices, understanding how they worked, creating something from scratch. It was like reconnecting with an old friend. What had once been just a hobby began to rekindle a flame I hadn't even known still existed. Getting back to working with electronics was like breathing after a long time submerged. I spent hours disassembling small devices, testing old parts, researching tutorials online, and getting lost among wires and tools. It was a kind of healing silence. Without realizing it, I began to learn more than I ever had in college. Not because anyone forced me, but because I genuinely wanted to understand. That childlike curiosity I thought I'd lost resurfaced, and with it came a sense of purpose, something I hadn't felt in years. Over time, I began selling some of my small projects online, simple things, but made with love and attention. The first sale was symbolic, a small amount, but the emotional impact was enormous. For the first time, what I created with my own hands generated real value. It was as if I had finally found a piece of myself that had been dormant. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I decided to create a profile on a freelance platform. I didn't have much experience or a portfolio, but I put together what I knew how to do: product design, simple automation, prototype assembly. For the first few days, nothing happened. No messages, no clients. I considered giving up, but I persisted. And then, a week later, I received my first order, a small automation project for an electronics store. I worked for days on end, studying, making mistakes, redoing until I delivered. When the client thanked me and paid me, I felt something that didn't come from outside. It was an internal, silent pride that stemmed from the effort. This wasn't just a job. It was a sign that I could turn my passion into something concrete. With each new project, my confidence grew a little more. Even though the money was small, the feeling of building something of my own was immense. But life, I've learned, has a cruel way of testing us when we start to believe. After a few months of small successes, the blow came. A major client, responsible for more than half my income, simply disappeared without paying. I was devastated. Bills were piling up, my computer was starting to crash, and I didn't know how to move on. That same week, I received a message from my mother. "Son, there's still time to go back to college." I read that sentence dozens of times. She hadn't meant to hurt me, but it stung as if she had. I felt like that insecure kid again, the son who disappointed. I seriously considered giving up, re-enrolling in the course, and pretending none of this had happened. But something inside me, a force I didn't even know existed, stopped me. I'd come too far to turn back. I decided to resist. I sold my bike to fix my computer, asked a friend for help promoting my services, and started posting more about my projects in technology groups and forums. It was then, almost by chance, that an engineer from a major startup saw my work and invited me for a chat. I read that message several times before I believed it. On the day of the meeting, my hands were sweating and my heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. He explained the project. He needed a prototype for an internal system. I didn't have all the necessary experience, but I accepted the challenge. I spent nights studying, testing, and starting over from scratch. When I delivered the results, he responded with a phrase I've never forgotten. "You're ready for something bigger?" I cried with relief. For the first time, someone saw value in me, not because of my degree, but because of what I was truly capable of. After that message, everything changed. What seemed like a simple project became a turning point in my life. The startup liked my work so much that they invited me to take on new challenges. I dove in head first. Each delivery was a mix of fear and excitement, fear of not being up to par, and excitement at finally following a path that made sense to me. Within 6 months, I was working with companies that had previously seemed unattainable. The money started rolling in, but what mattered most was recognition. I felt useful, capable, whole. Still, the specter of judgment lingered. When my parents asked if I was thinking about going back to college, I'd look away and reply, maybe someday. I didn't want to fight anymore, but I also didn't want to lie anymore. The truth was simple. I was rebuilding myself, and that process didn't fit into a diploma. Despite my professional progress, my relationship with my father remained fragile. He rarely called me, and when he did, it was only to see if I was back to school yet. It was as if to him, nothing I achieved was valuable unless it came with a degree. That hurt, even when I pretended not to care. For many nights I considered lying, saying I'd come back just to ease the tension. But I knew that would be betraying the only thing that still held me together, my truth. The silence between us was heavy, but I tried to believe that one day he would understand. I just wanted to be seen, not for what he expected of me, but for who I truly was. And until that day arrived, I kept going, one step at a time, learning to be my own support when the world insisted on discrediting me. It was during this period that I had the idea to create something of my own. I realized, through online groups and communities, how many talented people there were, but without opportunities, facing the same difficulties I faced. I decided I wanted to change that. I wanted to create a platform that connected small freelance engineers and technicians with companies seeking creative solutions but lacking the resources to hire large firms. The idea seemed crazy at first. I had no team, no investment, no business experience, but I had drive, and that, I already knew, was the most powerful fuel anyone could have. I spent days sketching ideas, studying code, design, and marketing. I slept little, ate poorly, but I was filled with an energy I hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if all the chaos of the last few years was finally finding a purpose. The following months were filled with intense work. I woke up early, studied new programming languages, read articles, attended lectures, and at night, tested what I'd learned. I did everything myself. The platform layout, the registration system, the integration with companies. There were dozens of mistakes, sleepless nights, and countless doubts. But unlike the Arthur of before, I didn't give up in the face of difficulties. Each obstacle became a learning experience. When I finally managed to launch the first version of the app, I remember staring at the screen, silent, with tears in my eyes. Not because it was perfect, far from it, but because that code, full of flaws and patches, was a faithful reflection of my journey, imperfect, persistent, and true. For the first time, I felt I was putting something into the world that carried my essence. I launched the app without investment, just with courage and a little faith. I used social media to promote it and told my story in a heartfelt post, explaining where the idea came from. I didn't expect much, but the response was surprising. Within a few days, the first registrations from interested professionals and companies began to appear. People from all over the country said they'd always dreamed of an opportunity like this. Seeing it happen before my eyes was thrilling. It was still small, fragile, but real. And for the first time, my father called me without asking about college. He'd heard about the project from an acquaintance and, in a low voice, said, "Congratulations, son. I'm proud." They were just a few words, but they carried immense weight. I hung up the phone and cried, not with sadness, but with gratitude. It was the beginning of reconciliation with myself and with him. As the platform grew, challenges I'd never faced before also emerged. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy creating prototypes, but someone responsible for running a business. I had to learn about finance, customer service, marketing, contracts, taxes, a whole new and daunting world. I made mistakes all the time. I hired the wrong people, trusted the wrong people, lost money due to lack of experience. But unlike before, I no longer let myself be paralyzed by failures. Each failure was a lesson. I finally understood that failure was part of the process. It was the price of evolution. And amidst so much pressure, I realized something important. I was no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. What drove me now was a genuine desire to build something useful, something that would open doors for others like me. It was the kind of purpose you don't teach in a classroom. Life shows you. Even with growing success, there were still days when insecurity hit hard. Sometimes I looked at everything I'd achieved and wondered if I deserved to be there. It was the old imposter syndrome, visiting me, whispering that I was just lucky, not competent. At those times, I remembered the late nights studying, the rejected projects, the tears shed in the college bathroom. It reminded me that nothing came easy. I had fought for every small step. So I took a deep breath and kept going. I learned to value the difficult days as much as the triumphant ones, because it was there that I found my strength. I also learned to ask for help, to not carry everything alone. Over time, I built a small team that believed in the project as much as I did. Simple but passionate people with the same sparkle in their eyes. And together, we transformed what was once an isolated dream into a living, breathing platform. 2 years into my journey, I received an email that would change everything again. It was from a tech company interested in acquiring the platform. At first, I thought it was a scam. It seemed too good to be true, but it was real. They had been following my growth and wanted to make an offer. The following weeks were a whirlwind: meetings, proposals, legal reviews. I, who had never participated in a negotiation like this, found myself sitting in front of executives discussing values I had never imagined. I remember one night when I turned off my computer and stared at the ceiling, trying to process what was happening. The boy who 3 years earlier had cried while locked in the college bathroom was now about to sell a project he had created with his own hands. Life, I realized, is not linear. It ebbs and flows, destroys and rebuilds, and if we have the courage, surprises us. The deal was finalized a few months later. When I signed the contract, my hands were shaking. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the meaning. That signature represented everything I'd experienced: the pain, the doubt, the fear, the stubbornness, the faith. After the lawyers left the room, I was alone for a few minutes. The silence seemed to echo within me. I remembered every sleepless night, every time I doubted myself, every look of disappointment I'd endured. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace, because I understood that every stumble had brought me to this point. Success wasn't a prize. It was the consequence of persisting when no one else believed. That day, I didn't celebrate with shouts or fireworks. I simply closed my eyes and silently thanked God for not giving up on me. After the sale, my life changed in many ways, but the most profound was internal. I no longer felt the need to prove anything to the world. I began to see success differently, not as a destination, but as a state of peace. I began sharing my story in videos and lectures, not as someone who had overcome everything, but as someone who had learned to fall and get back up. The response was surprising. People from all over the country began writing to me, saying they felt inspired to follow their own paths. People who had considered giving up, but found strength in my words. And it was then that I realized my mission went beyond technology. I wanted to help people understand that the value of a life lies not in the expectations of others, but in the courage to be true to oneself, even if the price is being misunderstood for a while. Today, when I look back, I see a scared boy, lost between fear and the desire to be accepted. A boy who believed he needed to follow the path others laid out for him, unaware that the true path is the one we forge with our own steps. And I would have so much to say to that Arthur of before. I would tell him not to blame himself so much, to understand that making mistakes doesn't make him weak, just human. I would tell him not to believe those who say dreaming is a waste of time. And above all, I would tell him to trust his own voice more, the one that, even drowned out by so much external noise, always tried to guide him. It was by listening to this voice that I found my truth, and it was in it that I learned that authenticity is the most valuable asset anyone can have, because when you are true to yourself, the rest falls into place. Despite my achievements, I still have difficult days. Sometimes I wake up with a heavy heart, feeling the weight of the responsibilities and decisions I need to make. At other times, anxiety tries to remind me that success is fragile, that everything can fall apart overnight. But today, I know how to deal with it better. I know that fear is a part of life, and that courage isn't its absence, but rather the decision to keep going, even when trembling. I've also learned that happiness isn't in never failing, but in finding purpose, even in failure. When something goes wrong, I no longer ask myself, why me? But rather, what is this trying to teach me? This shift in perspective transformed my life. It made me understand that what truly matters isn't what we achieve, but who we become along the way. After everything I've experienced, I've come to see the world with more empathy. I understand that each person carries a silent battle. The girl who seems confident may be crumbling inside. The man who appears strong may just be trying to survive. That's why I began practicing kindness as an act of resistance. Not the automatic kind, but the true kind that comes from looking, listening, and being present. Whenever someone writes to me saying, "Arthur, your story helped me," I respond with gratitude, but also with humility, because deep down, I know that the person who was most saved by this story was myself. Telling what I experienced is the way I found to heal myself every day, to transform pain into meaning and fear into faith. Sometimes I return to the university just to walk the halls. The same place that once suffocated me now brings me peace. The walls remain the same, but I'm no longer the same. I pass by the room where I presented that rejected project and smile. I remember the tears, the doubts, the judgmental looks, and I realize how necessary it all was. Without those falls, I wouldn't have learned to get back up. Without the silence, I wouldn't have heard my own voice. Life, I've learned, has a curious way of preparing us for what comes next. It tests, knocks down, challenges, but it also teaches, molds, and strengthens. And it's in this cycle of losing and starting over that we discover who we truly are. Today, I don't know what the future holds, and for the first time, that doesn't scare me. I move forward with the serenity of someone who understands that destiny isn't a destination, but a path in constant construction. I continue creating, learning, and making mistakes, but now with a light heart, because everything I've experienced has brought me here, a place of peace, purpose, and gratitude. And if there's one thing I'd like people to take away from my story, it's this: that no one needs to be born ready, that it's in the failures, the attempts, and the nights of uncertainty that we find ourselves. My name is Arthur, and this is the story of how I learned that the greatest success in life is allowing yourself to be who you are, even when the whole world tries to tell you otherwise.